minutes left. Okay, let me introduce the second speaker, Wing Dai Donald. He is Deputy Director, Hospital Planning of Khoo Teck Puat Hospital, Alexandra Health in Singapore. The topic of his presentation is Beyond the Skyrise Garden, the potential of urban rooftop farming in Singapore. Okay, why don't you give him a big hand?
Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I'd like to say a big thank you to the organizers and the Korean hosts for doing a great job. I'm sure you all would agree that they've been doing excellent in terms of getting this conference going. And today I'll be sharing with you my topic on Beyond Skyrise Garden, the potential of rooftop farming in Singapore. This is the agenda which I'll be presenting. Singapore is very unique. It's actually one of the smallest countries in the world. In fact, it's listed among the 20 smallest country in the world. Okay, and it has a population about 5 million and land area about just less than 700 square kilometers. So the density of people is fairly huge. It's about close to 7,200 people per square kilometers. And in Singapore, due to our limited land size, we actually faced a teething issue. We do not have a lot of farms, and most farms were actually gradually reduced for better usage by the government. And you can see from table 1 over the years, the farming area actually has reduced until from 875 hectares to 739 hectares last year. So it's actually very, very small in terms of having farms in Singapore to plant our own produce. A little bit about history. Way back in the ancient times, I'm sure all of you have heard of the famed Hanging Gardens of Babylon. That was one of the early records of skyrise or rooftop farming. Okay, and also it was recorded at the Villa of the Mysteries in Pompeii, Italy, in 1748 AD. These were the early records of the skyrise or elevated gardens, and it has been proven by a lot of research that rooftop or skyrise plantings actually reduce surface temperature. They provide resistance to thermal radiation to spaces beneath. And these are also supported by the Center of Remote Imaging, Sensing and Processing done by the National University of Singapore. The images that you see on the screen show the different areas around Singapore, okay? And the areas that are actually in blue and cyan, they are actually not developed areas. And those areas in red are actually suburban and urban areas. So you can see that forested regions actually differ quite a fair bit compared to the urban areas with less greenery. In Singapore, one of the early Skyrise Greenery project was the Bedok Court condominium, which was a housing project. It was built in the 1980s, and at that time, the architect actually designed for each apartment to have common corridor with a partially covered entrance porch and an above ground garden. Subsequently, when other buildings such as the Changi General Hospital, which is a public hospital, was launched, okay, way back in the 1990s, the hospital management actually planned for rooftop farms to be incorporated into the hospital, and it was to supply fresh food to patients, such as growing cherry tomatoes and herbs so that patients can enjoy this organic produce in their own backyard. We also have a hotel in Singapore called the Swiss Hotel. The management actually grow herbs. They have a herb garden on the hotel's podium rooftop. And the chef, okay, which you can see in the picture, actually select the type of herbs and spices to be grown. And they're actually being harvested for his own dishes, which is being served in Swiss Hotel's restaurant. In the hospital that I work in, which is called the Khoo Teck Puat Hospital, we also have planned for this rooftop gardens, and beyond that, we actually plan for rooftop farms, okay? Basically, Khoo Teck Puat Hospital is a 550-bed acute care hospital, and it's the newest government-funded hospital that was built last year, okay? It was completed last year in March and June 2010 to serve the northern region of Singapore. And the design team was appointed in May 2006, and we took a relatively short time. To be precise, it's about 3 years and 7 months to complete the construction of this hospital, from the first pile to the handover to the client. And this is an artist's impression of the hospital, and it also shows an actual photo when the hospital was opened last year. This hospital was actually built, okay, with a, can we go back to the previous, one more. Okay, this hospital was actually built because the team of doctors and nurses were actually asked to move from an old hospital called Alexandra Hospital, which is abbreviated as AH, okay, in short. Alexandra Hospital, which is also the hospital that I used to work in, was built in 1938. It's actually 73 years old, and it's extremely old. And in the north of Singapore, there is no acute care hospital. So the government decided to shift the team of doctors and nurses and the administrators to the north of Singapore to serve the people there. When we first designed this hospital, we wanted to make sure that we had a design principle to create a healing environment, okay, for patients, because our hospital is extremely patient-centric and patient-focused. In fact, the CEO of my hospital, his parking lot, okay, is sited far away from the lift lobby, and he makes sure that himself and all the staff actually gives up the parking lots near the lift lobbies to the patients. So again, I mentioned that when we first designed the hospital, we wanted to make sure that we create a healing environment to have the hospital within gardens and gardens within the hospital, and is to provide a tranquil, restful, and healing environment to provide sight, scent, and sound of nature surrounding the patients. And we are targeting to have 100 species of birds, butterflies, and fishes in lush natural surroundings to let the patients enjoy. So when we first started the design and the planning, we engaged focus group. We had residents, we had the government agencies being involved in the planning. We actually invited them to sit in our discussion to let us know how we should design the rooftop gardens to be. Can you go back to, okay. So I was saying we actually engaged the residents and the government agencies, okay? And when we first planned for this hospital, we wanted to make sure that we have rooftop farms and rooftop gardens, as you can see from the pictures on the screen. And this is an artist's impression way back in 2006, okay, when the architects actually came out with the perspective. And on the right is the actual photo after the hospital was completed. So we wanted to make sure that all the patients, whether from the wards, clinics, and even the intensive care units, okay, are offered a refreshing view of the gardens instead of staying in a septic environment. Now, the pictures that you see is actually taken from inside the intensive care unit. And we realized that having rooftop farms in the hospital has got many benefits. Number one, it will provide biodiversity preservation, because in the site where we built the hospital, it used to be a farming area, okay? There were pineapple plantation, rubber plantation, and we wanted to recreate that kind of biodiversity in the hospital. And we also wanted to make sure that we provide food sources to the patients. Now, these are the actual photos taken on our rooftop farms. We grow corn, we grow lady's finger vegetable, brinjal, spinach, and all sorts of other fruits, okay? And what we do is that we harvest these fruits and vegetables to serve the patients as part of their daily meals. So these are some of the vegetables and the plants, that we actually grow on the rooftop. We even grow different types of sweet potato, which the patients like very much. And also we wanted to make sure that by having such rooftop farms, we provide a healing environment. You can see that there are lots of birds and butterflies. You come to the hospital, they actually are attracted by the scent emitted by the various plants and the fruit trees. And we also provide work opportunities to the residents staying around the hospital. So these residents are very happy that we allow them to work on the rooftop farms, and most of them are actually homemakers and retirees. And a very important finding is that we wanted to investigate whether the rooftop farms, okay, could reduce the air conditioning load. The top photograph which you see, okay, it's showing the rooftop farm, and beneath it is actually specialist outpatient clinic, which is fully air conditioned. And previous findings have shown that when you have soil cover with vegetation, with plantings, okay, you could actually reduce the temperature. So what we did was that our facility team actually did a measurement. So we can see rooftop farm plot number 1, okay, it's a full farm plot. And rooftop farm plot number 3 shares a futsal pitch, which is an indoor football pitch for the patients who need rehabilitation and exercise. And when we did the measurement, we found that the full urban farm, okay, which is above our dental clinic, actually consumes about 10,500 kilowatt hours per month. And for the partial farm with the futsal pitch, okay, it consumes about 16,500 kilowatt hour. And that's actually a savings of about 28%. And these are actual figures that were measured, okay, when we took the electrical consumption readings in the hospital. The benefit of having the rooftop farms also help to reduce the urban heat island effect, okay, because the hospital's vegetation and trees, they enable evapotranspiration, which curtail higher urban temperature, and it also improves air quality, energy use, and improve human health through absorbing carbon dioxide and giving out oxygen. And also the rooftop farms act as community spaces, and it also consumes mechanical and electrical equipment. So every time when we get the hospital staff, the nurses, the doctors to be involved, they enjoy it very much because it allows them to have social bonding, and it also allows visitors to enjoy the greenery as well as the fruits of the labor of our residents who are helping us and the staff as well. And of course, the rooftop farms also, we have built in a rainwater collection system. What it does is every time when it rains, it will channel rainwater into an adjacent pond. This pond is called Yishun Pond. It's actually a rainwater collection pond, and it's actually used for public drinking purposes. It's actually run by the government. But what we do is actually we buy water from the government from this pond. The government actually sell it to us at a very highly discounted rate, and we treat the pond water for irrigating the hospital landscape areas. Now, some of the difficulties and challenges that we face, okay, include there are not enough crops, okay, because the size of the rooftop farms are not huge, and it's mainly grown for the occupants like the patients, and it's not sufficient for the community. And some of our fruit trees and crops are also exposed to vehicular and building related forms of pollution, because around the hospital, okay, there is quite a fair bit of construction, and there's quite a number of roadways around the perimeter of the hospital. And if you recall way back earlier this year, in May 2011, there was a E. coli outbreak in Europe. Okay, by having farms within a hospital, there could be a possible danger that contaminants and bacteria could break out, and within such a small area, it could spread rapidly. So this is something that we are looking into to make sure that we will contain any possible spread of diseases. The rooftop farms, okay, will also need high maintenance, including stringent waterproofing and drainage needs, and time to time we have to check that the water is not leaking. And of course, spare urban land areas are needed for the farm rest and rejuvenation, and they will be over-reaped if controlled access is not provided, because as we gain publicity, more and more residents around our hospital would like to come up to the farm to visit, and more often than not, they would like to take some of the vegetables and the fruits back, which would deprive the patients of such food sources. Potential of urban rooftop farming in Singapore is good because our Singapore government has several initiatives. We have a government agency called the National Parks Board, and they actually have this landscape replacement policy, okay, to encourage developers to make sure that there's sufficient landscape being built into their new developments. We also have a Skyrise Greenery incentive scheme, okay, where the government body actually will give certain incentive to the developers. We also have a Building and Construction Authority BCA Green Mark scheme to promote green sustainable design in the building industry. Now, more importantly, our Ministry of Finance had issued a directive in 2008, okay, that was 3 years ago, that all existing and new public sector buildings must minimally attain a Green Mark Gold and Platinum rating, which is kind of equivalent to your LEED standard, okay? And we also have this program by the National Parks Board, which is called the Community in Bloom program, to foster a gardening culture among residents. So the National Parks Board would provide gardening tools, would provide them the expertise and also the materials needed to have rooftop gardens on top of buildings. And of course, our National Institute of Education in Singapore has developed a urban farming technique called aeroponics, where hardly any little soil is needed. So you just need a liquid nutrient to grow vegetables in housing apartments, okay, so that residents staying around there can actually harvest the vegetable for their own use. I have also done a survey in the hospital to gauge the future outlook of the Skyrise gardens and urban farming in Singapore. Now, most of the responses that I got show an overwhelming 83 to 84% of affirmations, including that most people think that it's beneficial to have rooftop farms on top of buildings, and it is also possible to generate and harvest sufficient fruits and vegetables for patients and visitors. So in conclusion, I would like to say that Skyrise Greenery in Singapore is advancing, okay, although I must admit it's still at an infancy stage. It has grown from just pure Skyrise Greenery and rooftop gardens, okay, to urban rooftop farms in hotels, housing apartments, and even hospital. And in the case study of the new Khoo Teck Puat Hospital, which I just presented, it has yielded multiple benefits, including organic food production, biodiversity preservation, energy conservation, work opportunities, reduction in air conditioning load, reduction of urban heat island effect, and we also provide community spaces for the staff and visitors to congregate, and we also conceal the mechanical and electrical equipment that's housed on the rooftop. And last but not least, we actually collect rainwater from the rooftop and channel it to a nearby pond, which is being recycled for irrigating the hospital's landscape. And I must say that the survey results in my hospital have provided an optimistic outlook for urban rooftop farms. And coupled with the government initiative and environmental proponents, we think that in Singapore, we can actually meet the government's Skyrise Greenery target of having 30 and 50 hectares of Skyrise Greenery by 2020 and 2030 respectively. And these are some of the newspaper articles that were taken of the hospital. And our hospital also received the Building and Construction Authority, which is the government's building arm, Gold Award for Universal Design, because we actually incorporate the rooftop farms and the Skyrise garden for patients and visitors to enjoy. And I'd like to share that progress is impossible without change, and those who cannot change their minds cannot change anything. In Singapore, because of the tight land used, okay, it's not easy to change the mindset of developers, especially when land prices are very high, to incorporate rooftop farms in the buildings. But we feel that the hospital has taken the first step, and we will also want to encourage our counterparts who are building new hospitals to do likewise. I'd like to acknowledge my wife for being my inspiration. I, of course, like to thank Professor Philip Ophiu and Professor Jason Pomeroy. Both of them are actually speakers in this conference. And last but not least, the devotees, who are mainly the residents, the staff of the hospital, for making the urban rooftop farms a very successful project in my hospital. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Wei Wing Tai Donald introduced rooftop farming case in Singapore, and then also address the difficulties and challenge of each project, and also provide its future potential. Let's have 10 minutes for questions and answer. Please ask your questions to speaker when you have any questions regarding his presentations.
Very impressive projects for urban farming, and it's quite big, and actual cases for rooftop garden. Yeah, you already mentioned about some difficulties, including bacterial problems, especially that's the hospital. Also, my question is, are all plants and crops grown by organic farming? That means without any pesticide or the artificial fertilizers, the growing method.
Yes, the vegetables and the fruits that you saw in the slide presentation are all organically grown, because in our hospital, you have a very strict policy not to allow for insecticide and pesticide. So the moment you have wind breezes and air droughts, you could actually bring in these harmful substances to the patient areas. And so we actually make very sure that we used organic treatment, such as using a type of oil called neem oil to get rid of pests like locusts and grasshopper. It doesn't have any toxic substances inside this type of oil, but it emits a smell to drive away the locusts and the grasshoppers.
But yeah, that's the ideal, the farming method, but it's very, very difficult, as
Yes,
you know.
yes.
Yeah. This is the first year for farming.
Yes, it's the
Yeah.
first year, yeah.
Yeah, I'm very interested in the next progress. It's very difficult, as you know. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.